So how do you decide what third-party lead provider to go with, right? I mean, that's a very, very important question. And I don't think that it's fair to articulate nationwide or for the audience that we're talking to that there is one prescribed program. In fact, what I would say is that first you have to understand the difference between the two types of leads that you can buy. You can talk about an organic lead or you can talk about an aggregated lead. An organic lead is something that is created that you buy directly from the site that harvests the lead essentially from the consumer. There are also aggregated leads. There are millions upon millions of websites out there, and there's a lot of them that will share car information and allow consumers to submit buying information. And it isn't feasible for every one of these website owners to create a distribution model to connect themselves with dealers. So rather, what they do is they go to the big wholesalers or the big aggregators, and they wholesale the leads that they create on the market to these aggregators who then funnel them through their distribution network to the dealers.
So we're partnered with all your best websites, Edmunds, Kelley Blue Book, AOL, and we act as the go-between to help dealers connect up with these websites that have, frankly, all these eyeballs and they have all these customers.
We pull these leads from a variety of sources, as I mentioned. You know, the majority as a source comes from leads that we, create on our own through, a lot of work in search engine marketing, search engine optimization of our own sites, and again, a large number of leads come from this affiliate network that we all put through, whether it's leads we generate on our own or through our affiliate network, the same 36-point scrubbing, if you will, to validate the authenticity of the information we're providing.
I'm sure you get a lot of dealers that say, why would I pay for a lead? I can generate it myself through my website. What's the benefit to going through a third-party provider?
Well, part of it is, if you're a dealership, is you're investing your advertising for newspapers, television, maybe direct mail, maybe your own website. But you're not going to capture everybody. So we've got a national name. We have we spend most of our marketing dollars on places like Google and Yahoo for positioning. And so we're going to find customers that you can't. We're going to find people that haven't heard of you, that are in your neighborhood. We're also going to find customers that might be closer to your competitive dealer that would come to us instead of coming to them.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the print media is not working as well for car dealerships, and they're becoming aware of that quite frequently. Their online budgets should continue to increase, but a dealership can grow their business very easily by acquiring internet leads or by getting a website that yields a higher conversion ratio for internet leads, or even investing in search engine optimization or search engine marketing.
One of the least talked about advantages of the third-party lead providers is their scalable business model. And when you compare that to the business model of traditional media, you can really begin to contrast and see how much of an advantage and how much value it is to a dealer to have this scalable model. For example, if you're a small store and you want to compete with the big store down the street and you're going to compete in the newspaper, you're going to have to spend just as much money as they are in the paper. You might not have the budget for the full page color ad. Well, with the third-party leads, you can buy leads in increments, and essentially you can allow the growth to fuel itself. If you go into the newspaper, a small quarter-page ad just isn't going to compete with the full big-page ad. Third-party leads levels the playing field. You can go in as a dealer with whatever budget you want, with whatever radius you want, with whatever franchise you want, if you're a multiple franchise store, and buy the leads that are relevant for you and scale your growth. You don't have to overcommit and run on a lean cash flow at the beginning to get to the successful point. You can begin seeing return and positive cash flow from day one because you can scale your growth and buy leads in increments.
Closing rate are just like conversion rates. The only thing important about your closing rate is that it continues to improve. If you're a Toyota store and you want to make yourself feel really good, ask the Chevy store next door what their closing rate is. You're going to feel like a giant, okay? But if you ask, say, a Subaru store, and you're a Toyota store, and that Subaru store's got that 30% closing ratio or whatever they've got, I mean, different brands are typically going to have different levels of closing rates.
we have a standing, always a set objective for every internet manager for every store. What that is, they have to beat the best of the month.
The question of are all third-party leads created equally? The answer is they're all created in a lot of cases the same way, but the close rate, the propensity to buy, where those consumers are found on the internet, how they're found, how they're enticed to generate the lead, all comes down to a level of close rate of where those customers are and the source of those leads. So you need to ask those lead providers, where are those customers coming from? For example, if the websites, for example, that the lead provider is buying the leads from, how in market do you think the website that those leads are generated from, how in market those consumers are? And I like to always use the example of Edmunds. Edmunds in the industry has always had traditionally a very in-market car buying environment on its website.
A third-party lead, I think, what works in Salt Lake City isn't going to always work in LA. And what works in LA is not going to work in Salt Lake City. I think that the demographics of your people and where the aggregators of the third-party lead providers, what websites are being advertised in your marketplace? Where are the customers going? What's the niche in that market? I think that it varies enough to where you got to test the waters with each one of your lead providers, find out which one works for you.
Particularly when looking at the lead aggregators, or those that broker leads throughout the hundreds and thousands of millions of sites that are out there, it's really important to realize that one particular brand, if you heard at the 20 group, is exceptional in a particular market, that may not be the brand that is the strongest in your market, or the opposite is also true. If you hear at the 20 group, oh, stay away from such and such a lead aggregator, well, it really isn't a valid argument to say that in a whole different geography, because that company is brokering leads across thousands of sites throughout the internet, and they might be getting leads essentially that are grown or harvested from a site completely different than those sites that are harvested in your geographic location. Third-party providers can leverage a mass marketing budget to a degree that a local dealer cannot. And by them going out on a national scale with national media buys and national presence, they can capture a market that we can't. We can then tap into that market on a pay for performance level with these third-party lead providers.
I believe that the third-party lead providers, there's questions out there about the integrity of them by victims of, oh, well, we try to deduplicate our leads before they get to you.
Right.
Well, they do that within their own system. But if I'm a dealership and I receive a lead from AutoBytel,
And from Delix, and from AutoUSA.
because this customer went to this website sold it to both of them, whichever gets it to me first, the other one's considered a duplicate.
There is a lot of talk, negative talk sort of, about duplication in the third-party lead process. And having traveled now and met with every major player in the third-party space, there's not a single one of them that isn't concerned and working on the issue. But we have to keep in mind as a dealer body that these companies cannot control consumer behavior. What is to stop, Bob and Betty customer from going to one third-party site submitting a lead, and a week later going to another third-party site and submitting a lead? You might get duplicate leads and think that it's a third-party lead with some malicious intent, but that isn't the case. The bottom line is, third-party leads can't control that consumer behavior, and it's important to take a step back. But so as a dealer, what's important, right? What's important is my profitability and my ROI.
An exclusive lead doesn't exist. Now, customers or dealers on our program might have exclusive territory, which means we may send that purchase request to that one dealer. But when you look at consumers are going to multiple sites. So whether you're buying requests from AutoBytel or anybody else out there, if anyone is telling you that you're getting an exclusive lead that nobody else is getting, I encourage you to question that, because we see data that shows consumers are going to multiple sites, they're being connected to multiple dealers. Whether it's AutoBytel doing it or not doing it, the consumer is driving that process. So what we look at and we encourage dealers is understand that there's no such thing as an exclusive customer on the internet. So it's extremely important that you're the first dealer to get that customer on the phone, You've got a process in place to follow up with that consumer, and most importantly, you're differentiating yourself, assuming that that consumer is going to 2 or 3 or 4 other dealerships.
There's two sides to your lead acquisition strategy. There's the offensive posture, where essentially you're going out to the market to acquire new business, new growth, and increase your profits. There's also the defensive strategy, where you realize that if you don't buy these leads, that somebody else will. And so it's a fine balance between playing offense and playing defense, maximizing your ROI and growth. But ultimately, in the end, why wouldn't you buy every lead that you could get your hands on, even across all of the different providers? Let's say there's 10, 15, even 20% overlap in them. If you got your money back for your duplicate leads, you were able to credit them, and so in essence, those weren't costing you anything. So really what you're talking about is if the ROI is there, if the cash flow makes sense, and you have the personnel to scale the growth, you really ought to acquire every lead that your market has in due time and with discipline in your buying.
I've heard many times, for example, that Audi dealer in Des Moines will say to people, especially third-party lead providers, why do I need to buy that lead, for example, because this customer has no other place to go than to come to my store. So I will just wait for that customer to come to my store and not invest in the lead, investing in building that relationship prior to the customer walking through my door. And the only thing I have to say about a view of strategy in that aspect is that with loyalty today across brands going down, down, down at a very quick rate, a lot of that owed to there's just so many more selection out there today, so many more brands, so many more vehicle types, so many more things for consumers to choose, is that Audi dealer who thought in most cases his competitor was the other Audi dealer 400 miles away is probably the BMW and Mercedes dealership in town as well. And that Audi dealer in that example has to really look at himself and say, is the BMW and Mercedes dealer buying leads? And are those consumers submitting a lead for a Mercedes and an Audi? And if he's not even going to spend the time and talk to that consumer, but the Mercedes dealer is, while the consumer is still in their home and hasn't ventured out and builds a relationship with that consumer and sells them on that Mercedes-Benz, the problem is the Audi dealer will never know that they never had an opportunity with that customer.
You got to get creative today.
Yeah.
The leads that you buy from a third-party lead provider, basically in the industry today, we have 2 types of leads. You have a credit lead and you have a vehicle lead.
Right.
Okay. If you think of the leads that come from AutoTrader, Cars.com, places where you list your inventory, those aren't lead providers. Those are inventory listing services. Right. We display our inventory, and based on what's in our inventory, we generate more or less leads by paying a subscription fee each month.
Some of the buzz in the industry about third-party leads is that search engine marketing and optimization is replacing third-party leads.
It's almost like dealers are looking for the next best thing. What is the answer? And people thought search is the answer. Well, search is part of a marketing strategy. It should be a balanced strategy.
There's always going to be information service providers out there on the web that do an incredible job at providing specific information and research to consumers, and you really cannot compete with them on all levels.
Really what it comes down to is it more profitable than the next best option? So as long as the ROI is there, as long as the cash flow is there, you're going to continue to buy third-party leads and you're going to continue to maximize the revenue stream. I don't particularly see it going away anytime in the near future. It's a very foundational piece to a dealership's internet strategy.
You have some third-party lead providers that might have an average close rate of 10, and you might have some lead providers that have a close rate of 5. Now, are any of them selling you bad leads, making leads up? In most cases, these companies, they're out selling leads to dealers. At some point, all of these consumers are ready to buy. You just as a dealer have to really understand and ask those providers, where are those leads coming from, and how can you validate for me what the average close rate is going to be for the average dealer?
The bottom line is, as you diversify and you have more categories of leads coming in, you have to develop all kinds of variations on your lead management process to optimize the results from each type of lead. You don't handle a buyback lead the same as you handle a credit lead. You don't handle the credit lead the same way as you handle a new car lead, and you shouldn't handle a new car lead exactly the same way as you handle a used car lead.
You have to understand that the leads that go through the manufacturers are people that are typically less immediate. they're doing the research, they're looking at the manufacturers, they're looking at the details. The leads go to third-party lead providers, can oftentimes be less immediate. The people who have a tendency to go directly to your website are more, I know who you are, I've identified it, I'm finally ready to get my car, I'm at that selling stage. So when you look at a block of 300 leads, those people have different varying levels of buying styles and buying habits and getting their information. So for a dealership to reap the benefits, they say whatever we change in a process today to do the accurate measurements of how that affected us in business, you almost have to wait 90 days to see where you've cultivated the approach. Unfortunately, in this industry, sometimes we think in terms of sell a car today and that 30-day focus, and if it doesn't work, you shift gears. And you have to go with the trends and the buying habits of the customers.
1 month is not enough to make strategic decisions about. You have to look at a long period of collecting these metrics.
The utility is coming out to improve the effectiveness of how you manage and work third-party leads. For example, Polk is coming out with a lead scoring system that helps you prioritize which leads you should talk to first and how you should talk to them. So there's advances that are going to make this more exciting and more interesting as they come in.
We took over 2 million leads, put it into our analytics group, got some really smart people say, start looking at this and help us really understand what's going on with these leads from an analytics and predictive perspective. In the most basic sense, a quality lead is defined to be a lead that's likely to purchase, right? And that's what we call the modeling objective.
It's been pretty common since internet leads began coming onto the scene that every internet lead is handled the same. What we know is that customers are different. Their needs are different. Their expectations are different. And when we want to take this to the next level of sophistication, what we want to be able to do is to respond to a unique customer in a unique way. Every business that is, nationally branded businesses and so forth takes segmentation as a serious and important part of their marketing strategy. We have the capability to support that kind of segmentation and allowing you to customize your messaging so that you communicate uniquely to unique customers and give them the products and the information and the pricing that is appropriate for them based on their segment.
Not only am I gaining by putting them on the leads, they sell more, their customers are happier, they're selling more cars, they're making more money, the owner of the dealership is happier. There's absolutely no losers. When you get into assessing who does best with each lead and you start doing lead matching, where you match the lead up with the resource that's best at handling that type of lead, everybody wins. The consumer's happier, the salesperson's happier, the dealer's happier because you sell more cars. There are no losers in that scenario.
Third-party providers can leverage a mass marketing budget to a degree that a local dealer cannot. And by them going out on a national scale with national media buys and national presence, they can capture a market that we can't. We can then tap into that market on a pay for performance level with these third-party lead providers. When you look at traditional marketing and how good, historically speaking, dealers are at mastering their brand in their physical community, there has still always been the Costco lead providers, the AAA buying service, and these other form of fleet tail buying services, because customers are always going to want to go to a third party to validate their decision. And it's no knock on the car business, so we shouldn't take it in any way offensively. Before I go buy a washing machine, before I go buy a big screen TV, I go online to CNET and I see what the reviews are and I see who does what, and you go to these third-party sites. So third-party sites aren't going away. So we need to embrace them. We need to bring them in more fully. And what you do is you just have to track your ROI, and you need to define what is an acceptable return on investment for you. My take on it is, if it's profitable, you want it. Third-party leads are currently a very, very profitable source, and I don't see that changing in the future.